Onda tinggi te era tutti te in profonda sicura sonda. Onda tinggi te era tutti te in profonda sicura sonda.
G'day, Tragic here, and this is the end of the Pathfinder poison pill quest run. What we're doing here is I'm just choosing my new deck. Now, I originally did a video where I talked through everything I was doing, and when I was, it just looked boring when I did the editing. So I thought I would redo it where I actually just presented the actual decks that I chose and my reasoning for it. Now, if you disagree with my choices, because I made some controversial decisions, because I actually got a lot of help from a guy named Scott and a couple of other people, but particularly Scott. But in some cases, I've chosen to completely ignore all the advice and did my own thing. These could be really bad decisions. Who knows? But if you look in the description, there'll be a link to tube tables where I've got a thread for this playthrough where I've got all the decks and everything. So if you want to chat, leave comments in the video or comments on the forum. Either one's fine. Because there's going to be a bit of time between now and the next quest, so there's plenty of time to modify these decks. But so that's enough for this intro. Let's get back to Past Me. Right, so let's go through this. We're going to start with Emery, whatever. I really need a pronunciation thing. Now, she is our big hitter. She's got a strength melee of D12 plus 2, and she's also got the strongest health, so we can send her to the most badass locations. So we want to really stock her up. And if we look at her ability, she gets 5 weapons, 2 armors, 2 items, 2 allies, and 4 blessings. So she's really stacked. And we got some really good weapons in the last game. So we've given her the Great Sword, which is strength or melee plus 2 d6s. So that's basically d12 plus 2 plus d12. That's amazing. She's got the Long Sword plus 1, which is the same as the Long Sword, except it's obviously got a plus 1 to it. So it's a melee plus a d8 plus 1. Plus we've got a normal long sword. We've got the mace, which we've seen on quite a while. This is just a plus d8. And then we have the spiked chain, which is a plus d8 as well. It's actually 2 d4s. And it's got some other fancy abilities here where you can discard and stuff. Also, as well as that, we've got slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing, which might come in handy at some point. But anyway, she has extremely powerful weapons now, like really strong weapons. So that's really awesome. Now for her items, we're going to use, for her armor, remember she gets 2 armor. Now basically she's got some very good weapons, so we don't want to lose those weapons if possible. But she actually has the highest health pool. See, the way the health works in this game is that when your deck runs out, you die. Okay? And when you take damage, you discard cards and you draw up to your full hand. Now, because she has a hand size of 4, which means no matter how much damage she takes, she can only ever lose 4 cards, which means that she's got the slowest draw in the game. So she depletes her deck the slowest. So we don't really need to worry. I mean, we don't want to discard her cool weapons, but at the same time, we're not worried about her dying, which I think at this stage of the game is more important. So I've given her actually some pretty weak things. I want to get rid of these wooden shields as quickly as possible because they completely suck. But we've given her the chainmail and the wooden shield because there are other characters that have larger draws that I think will be more likely to need armor. Because remember, she's got such good weapons, I'm pretty much expecting her just to kick ass the whole time. Now, I'm really low on items in my card pool. I don't have a lot of cool items, unfortunately. I'm giving her one spyglass and I'm giving her one holy water. The reason I'm giving her the holy water is because I happen to know, because I've played the game before, that the next quest has a lot of undead. So I want to get rid of my bottles of water, basically. I don't want these potions clogging up the deck or clogging up the card pool. So I'm quite happy to get rid of it. And when I go through the cards that I'm not using, you'll see that there isn't a lot of choices to replace this because I don't have a very deep item pool. In fact, if we go to my items right now, I've only got 2 potions of fortitude left. Now, fortitude may sound like a healing or increasing your health or something, but it's not. There's a type of check, a fortitude check, which I've actually never seen. I've never even seen one. So I'm going to take these out and just forget about them, because at least the holy water potion has a function. Okay, then the guides are pretty interesting. Basically, I've given her the survival check, and plus dexterity non-combat check, because and that just sort of boosts what she's already got. Now, I thought I do have a soldier. Okay, I do have a soldier in here, which does add a d4 to your combat check, but really I'm just thinking she shouldn't really need it, so I'm not really worried about that. So that's what I've given it. These will boost the stats she's got in actual things that she's weak in, because she's pretty strong in all that kind of stuff with all those weapons. And then she just gets 4 blessings. So that's her. So she's got great sword, long sword plus, mace, spike chain, chainmail, wooden shield, holy water, meh, spyglass, awesome, guide, troubadour, and remember, because I'm playing 6-player and the timing is so strict, I'm probably going to be using all my characters for their discard and explorability anyway, and then a bunch of blessings. Okay, so that's her done. Woohoo! Let's have a look at Hask. Now, Hask is basically, he's our ranged guy, to put it in those terms. So he gets a whole bunch of weapons as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these were a strange choices, I thought, because basically we've got 2 light crossbows and we've got 2 long bows. Now, we also have, in the card pool, we've got short bows as well and a sling. But what's interesting is the short bow adds 1d6, the sling adds 1d6, and both of these really awesome looking bows only add a d6 because it adds the non-modified strength die. Now, yeah, I mean, that's just not... I chose the bows because we had 2 copies of them, okay? And just because I like the concept of the bow, I think I chose that for thematic reasons, but there's really no reason to choose the longbow over the other ones for this character, because literally the longbow has the same stats as the sling, as in it's a plus d6. There is a discard ability to add a d4, but again, I'm pretty sure that's on these guys as well. Yeah, add a d4, and the sling can add a d4. So really, even though the longbow looks awesome, it's actually not that good. But the light crossbow is a plus d8, so that's good. Now the star knife is an interesting one. This gives us a plus d4, which isn't that good, because remember those other ones are plus d6, but I may discard the card to add 2 extra d4s. And when playing another weapon, you may discard this card to add 1d4 to anything. So I think that's actually a pretty useful card, one that you can kind of, you know, chuck out while you're doing other combat if you need a little bit of a boost. Even though this is only a plus d4 if I reveal it, and the other one's a plus d6, the ability to just add that to this one and say, so I reveal I get a plus d8 and a plus d4, that's pretty strong. So we're keeping that one. So that's his choices here. Okay, now he only gets 1 armor, I believe. Yeah, he only gets 1 armor, and we're giving him the half plate, which is a combat damage resistance of 3. Now the reason we're doing this is he's actually really key to my strategy for playing this game. Basically, his ability not only allows him to scry the counter deck, but it also allows him to add a d4 to any character simply by recharging, I believe it is. Yeah, by recharging anything with range. So all his weapons have range, and adding that d4 to a lot of the combat checks is really key to it being awesome. So this is in here to preserve his hand if he takes damage, which hopefully he won't. Now again, my item pool's really low. There's not a lot of cool stuff in my item pool. So we're giving him Blast Stone just to aid him in not getting damage, and the protection of braces is the same thing. And we're also giving him a discard this card to add 1 die to any boon check. That just allows him to pick up items easier. Like I said, there's not a lot of choices for my items, so these are the ones I've picked. Now for his actual ally, we're giving him this cool, really awesome promo card, which adds +3 plus the fire trait to combat checks, which is really awesome. Again, because we don't want him to ever be taking damage, because we don't want him to lose his ranged cards. So that just gives him more power. Now, I could give this to Amaryl, you know, our big, massive power chick, but I think she's plenty powerful enough. She doesn't need them. And then he just has a bunch of blessings. So that's Hask done. Booyah. Let's do Sagen next. We'll do our casters last. Now Sagen is an interesting character because he gets a bonus. He's basically like, like Bulletproof Monk or whatever, a Shaolin monk, like he's a martial artist. That's the way I think of him. Basically, he can use his dexterity instead of his strength die for combat checks. Okay? Which is pretty awesome because his dexterity is D10 plus 2. Now, Amulet of Mighty Fists is a reveal to add 1d4 with the magic trait to any strength or melee test. So that combos with his ability, which is awesome. Now, the Matlock is, like I said, we don't have a lot of choices for our combat. He's the guy that I like to send to high combat areas as well as our warrior queen. So I've given him the spyglass so he can peek through the deck. I've given him the Sage's Journal so he has an extra d4 when trying to defeat henchmen or villains, and not a lot of other choices. So I've given him the Mattock to, I don't even know how to pronounce that, Mattock, whatever. That adds a d8 to a non-combat strength test, and his strength is a d6, which is a fairly common number. I do have a crowbar in my card pool, but I've given that to another character with a much lower strength. And the cool thing about the crowbar is it actually automatically passes. You don't need to roll. So I think it's better with it going to him. Now he gets a bunch of guys here. So I'm giving him the guide, which is pretty much just like I said, most of these are just going to be used for exploring again a second time. We got recharge for a non-combat strength test, that helps with his strength again. We've got recharge for perception check, and we've got recharge for survival check. Again, we're probably never going to use them for that. Now look at all his blessings. Now he's got an ability where whenever he's doing a combat check, he can recharge a blessing instead of discarding it. So he can cycle through these blessings quite quickly. So what I've decided to do is give him all our specialty blessings, right? Now he can play these on other people, but when he does that, they get discarded. But because he's recharging all his combat blessings, this should mean that I think it'll mean that it'll allow him, it'll give us more freedom to use our blessings. We can basically not have to worry about them as much because these will be coming back. Now, this is the one that's really cool because this adds 2 dice to his dexterity, and we basically want to end up replacing his entire blessing pool with these guys. That would be awesome. This one is just for recharging, which is almost useless for us because almost all our spellcasters can recharge automatically or pretty easily so far. And Torag is a non-combat strength test. This will most likely be played on other people. So yeah, that's his blessing deck. So he's an interesting character, and I think he's one of the better ones. Okay, so let's look at an interesting one. Now I've made some, what I think is, because I've got a lot of help from a guy named Scott's been helping me out, and a couple of other people have been helping me with setting up my characters, you know, just for fun. And I've really, you know, not listened to their advice for Kayara, so let's see if it comes out. Basically, she has a pretty decent melee attack, so she's got the 2 maces that she started the game with. These are the same ones she originally started with. They're pretty good. They're a plus D8 to combat, so awesome. So she gets the maces, that's nice. Now, she gets the magic half plate, which has some interesting abilities with the banish. You can banish it to reduce damage to 0. Which means, you know, and if we're proficient in heavy armors, you actually can bury it instead, and she is proficient in heavy armors. So if it comes down to it, we can actually just bury this card and reduce to 0. That's the magic aspect of it. And it's also cool and thematic that she has magic armor, you know, because she's a magic user. She's basically a battle priest. And wooden shield, got to get rid of these, they're crap. But anyway, so she's got the magic plate, and that's over any of the other characters. Like Hask has the other plate mail, but he's not actually proficient in heavy armor, so he couldn't use the ability. So that's what she gets here. Now here's the first of the controversial ideas. There's the second controversial idea. I have not given her any cure spells at all, okay? She has a natural cure, which is actually pretty strong. Okay, it's a D4 plus 1, okay? And the cure spell itself is exactly the same, a D4 plus 1, okay? So there's no advantage to her casting this than using her natural heal. You don't get anything more, it's no better, right? So I thought, why give her cure spells at all? Instead, she has to just reveal a card. She doesn't even need to discard it to do her, as long as it has the divine trait, to do her natural heal. Let me just check that. Spell of your first exploration this turn, you may reveal a card. Pretty awesome. The difference between the cure spell is that you can cast it at any time, and you don't have to do it during the start of your turn. This is giving me the idea that we're going to give her functional spells rather than heals. She's already got the natural heal, okay? So we're giving her Detect Evil, we're giving her Strength, which can be cast on anyone, and we're giving her Sanctuary, which can be cast at places that she's at the location of. And remember, she's going to be hopping around to the same location as other people and healing them, so the Sanctuary is going to be up, Strength hits anyone, and Detect Evil allows her to just sort of, you know, peek at the deck. So I think these are actually pretty strong for her, rather than giving her lots of heals, which is what everyone recommended to me. Now she gets 1 item, and I've also decided to give her another Holy Water. Now she has a really strong ability versus undead. She gets a plus D8 fighting undead already, just naturally, because she's a holy healer. But what's interesting is the Holy Water has the divine trait. So we can use this to fuel her heals, the same way we can use those spells. It gives her 4 spells four cards to fuel heals, and that's the main reason why it's in here. I'm not planning to actually discard this, as you know, we can discard this to automatically kill an undead, but hopefully we're not going to ever need to do that. But the point is, we now have 1, 2, 3. We now have 4 divine trait cards, all able to fuel her healing, but all have functionality that we can cast if we need to. So I think that's going to be the way I'm going to run this character for now. And like I said, it's a little bit controversial. It's not against, it's not what I've been advised. But, well, I'm doing it anyway. Okay, Troubadour is, you know, it's a +2 dexterity charisma, which she kind of sucks at all that. So again, really these characters, they're mainly going to be used for exploring, so it doesn't really matter. And then she just has normal blessings. Only Sagen is going to have fancy blessings. Everyone else just has the normal blessings. Okay, so that brings us to Lynn, who is our other healer. Now she I'm building her as a healer, but she also becomes pretty heavy duty combat later on in the game as the game progresses, depending on how you develop her. Now, the way I'm trying to set the game up is to have 2 healers, 4 heavy hitters. That's what I want to do. So she doesn't have a natural heal, so I've given her because she had 6 spells. Wow, so I've given her 4 cure spells, which is extremely strong. Okay, and like I said, these are not actually stronger than Kiara's natural heal, but it allows her to heal, which is something that didn't happen in the last time we played. We never actually got, in the last game, she never actually had a cure spell in hand. Now she's got a high chance of getting one. We've also given her Mending. Now the thing about Mending is a pretty bad spell, which is why it's only 2 to acquire. But what this allows you to do is, this allows you to discard a card from your hand to draw a card out of your discard pile that has the matching trait. Okay, it's got to be a weapon or an armor. Now that means that she's particularly awesome to go to Amriel's place, because we could like discard like you know, the spiked chain and get the great sword out of the discard pile or whatever. Okay, so you can discard a weapon to draw a weapon. So that's a pretty strong card, but it's not really that strong because you've actually got to discard to use it. Both characters have to discard. This is a card that I want to get rid of. And then I'm giving her Inflict, which is her combat. It's a combat divine card. I could have given this to Kiara, and it's a good fit for her, but she's already got a pretty hefty mace that she can club people over the head, so I'm thinking give her Inflict. Okay, so that's kind of controversial. We've loaded her up with the heal spells and we've given no heal spells to Kiara. Now, she's a little weak, so we've given her the Elven Boots and the Caltrops. Now, this is interesting because the Elven Boots, if you reveal it, it gives you 1 dice to acrobatics. Now, the only character in our set that has acrobatics is Sagen. Is Sagen, which is a D10 plus 2. Okay? You know, I've got to be really careful because his ability is dexterity, not acrobatics for that ability. So it's a D10, not a D10 plus 2. Man, I suck at this game. Anyway, so why isn't this in Sagen's deck? And basically it's because even if you have no ability in anything, you always roll a D4. So this does add a D6 to a D4. But more importantly, you can recharge this card to succeed at a stealth check instantly. Now I didn't do a single stealth check in the other game, but every time you encounter a monster, you have the opportunity to do a stealth check. And you know, you've got to check things and roll dice and all this kind of stuff. And if you succeed, the monster, you know, is avoided and it's shuffled back into the deck. This is an automatic win. You just play this card, bam, you automatically sneak by them because you've got your super soft, sneaky Elven Boots. And that's just to give her a little more stability because she's really only got this attack. That's pretty much her only attack at the moment until we get some more actual combat spells for her, which is the goal, to slowly morph her into a hybrid healer attacker. But until then, we've given her Elven Boots and Caltrops, and Caltrops has the same deal. You can banish the card, which gets rid of it from the game, puts it back in the box, to defeat, to evade a monster with difficulty 14, and you can banish the card to actually kill a monster who's difficulty 9. So again, same idea as the Elven Boots, it just allows her to move a little more freely around as a healer without worrying about being, killed. Now, of course, for allies, we've just got every single animal ally we have, and that fuels her ability. And then, of course, she has her blessings. So that's a bit of a, controversial setup as well, I think, from what I've been recommended. And finally, woohoo, it's Sione, my favorite. Come on, you gotta love fireball slinging chicks. Now, this is also going to be a little bit controversial because if we look at my discard pile, this is the stuff that ends up getting shuffled back into the deck. We have Acid Arrow, we have Lightning Touch, those are actual high-powered spells. Now, when she has an ability, where you can discard a card to roll an arcane dice plus 1d6, You can discard any card to do that, So she's got a natural, powerful fireball. Now that fireball will probably get weaker as the game goes on. Well, it actually does get weaker. I know for a fact it gets weaker. But for now, it's only 2 points less than these quite easy to obtain and common spells. So I don't think it's worth taking up a magic slot in her deck for these cards, which are literally only +2 to her natural attack. We've got some pretty strong healers, so we don't have to worry about her discard so much. And so like Kiara, instead of doing that, we're loading her up with utility spells. We do have one Force Missile, so she does have one more powerful spell because, like I said, we don't have a lot of choice here. But I've chosen to give her a Mirror Image, which is an extremely strong basically it means instead of taking damage, you sort of conjure a second copy of yourself who takes the damage. It's very, very strong. And we've got this one, which is interesting, which is Charm Person. You can bury this once every game to just randomly draw an ally from the box. So in a way, this is an automatic explore. Every time I get this card, it's the same as drawing an ally, right? And there's a chance we'll draw some really awesome ally from the box. So this is the kind of card that might not be cool. I think, is this going to be good or is this not going to be good? But I think as we play the game, because we're right at the start of the game when we got this, if we just cast this every single game, it's going to give us a lot more options. And at the very least, it just gives us an ally that we can then discard straight away to do a second explore. So I think that's pretty strong. Okay, now again, remember what I was saying about Amory, how because she only draws 4 cards, she's got the strongest health pool? Well, she draws 6 cards, so she draws more cards than anyone else in the game. So if she takes a massive amount of damage, she's going to draw 6 entire cards. So that has two results. One, it means that cards are going to be, it's going to be easier to get cards that we really want to see. Like, for example, Holy Candle, which is a card I got in the very first playthrough and is just super lucky to get. Because the biggest problem in this game in 6-player is time, right? Because you're flipping the timer, which is the blessing deck every turn. You've got 30 turns to complete the quest, no matter how many characters you have. So when you use 6 characters, the blessing deck goes very quickly because it goes 6 times per round. Holy Candle allows you to shuffle 1d6 random cards from the blessing discard pile into the blessing deck. So this is a super strong card. So because she's drawing 6 at a turn, or drawing up to 6, she's more likely to get this card in her hand than any other character, so it's got to be with her. And because she has, you know, the biggest problem, she's discarding cards to fuel her attack, she's taking damage because, you know, she might not be that strong. We've given her the Amulet of Life so she can reshuffle, she can just, you know, reduce damage, beg your pardon. So she's actually going to be a high target for our healers. And then we've got the Crowbar, which is kind of like the Matlock. It increases our strength checks. So that's really cool. Also, we've given her the Burglar, which adds 1d10 to her stealth check or her disable check. Now, we're not running a Burglar. Like I don't know which character it is, but one of the characters, you know, instead of Sione, is actually a thief. And she has perception and all these, you know, and disable. Perception and disable are the traits that that card has, which none of our cards really have. It's a huge hole in our deck. So we want to get a whole bunch of these burglars. We really need to hire a thieves guild to help us out because we don't have thieves in our party. And so not only remember, she doesn't have any of these values, so it's a D4 plus a D10. That's actually a pretty decent roll, especially if you're blessing it. But it adds it to the stealth check as well, which means we can, because, you know, she's a bit fragile, we can use this to escape. Guide and Night Watchman and Sage, these are all just, like I said, we know what all these do, and we're most likely going to use them to explore. And then she's got a bunch of blessings. And that, my friends, is the end of that. That's our decks. Now let's just quickly go through the discard pile. We've got a dagger, crap. Now these are the two which I've chosen not to put into Sione's hand, which reduces her power. And it's a hard choice because these automatically recharge, okay? Which means they don't go into a discard pile. Her natural ability, she has to discard. These, or not only are they +2 on damage than her natural ability, these don't get discarded, which means it doesn't deplete her health. But I'm fairly confident with our healers, and I'm fairly confident we'll be able to pick up more of these on the way, so I'm not too worried about that. Now, Potion of Fortitude, like I said, I've never seen a Fortitude check. I don't even know what they're for, and I think, especially for the next quest, the other potions are just better. Like the Blessing Potions actually have a function in the next quest, and remember, when you use a potion, they're banished. So, you know, I'm just gonna forget about them. So, and then we've got Night Watch and a Soldier and a Blessing. Now the Soldier is the only one I'm a bit iffy on. The Soldier adds a +D4 to any combat. So this could go really well into Kiara's deck or into Amaril's deck and just add to their combat checks. Now, I don't think she needs it because she's got those amazing weapons, but it could be a good fit for Kiara. Now, Kiara has one ally, okay? Now, at the moment, her ally is the Troubadour, which adds to a non-combat dexterity charisma check. Now, like I said, we're most likely always going to be discarding to explore the location, but if there's a particularly nice, you know, boon to acquire, it might be better to have the Troubadour than have the Soldier. But still, this is the only really card, like, there's lots of questions about how I've organized the cards I've picked, but this is the only card I haven't put in any of my decks that I'm a little bit iffy about. And that's about it. That is the setup. Okay, well that's it. I will see you guys next time. Now remember, it's going to be it's not as long obviously, but there's going to be a little bit of a break before the next quest. So remember, you can always go to Tube Tables. There'll be a link in the description to suggest changes, or you can just suggest it in the comments. But it'd be cool if you go to Tube Tables site, which is part of the Board Game Geek, and you can chat there. Okay. Ooh, exciting. I'll see you guys next time.
Onda tinggi te era fuzzi te in profunda sicura sonda. Onda tinggi te era fuzzi te in profunda sicura sonda.